I remember seeing a video on my YouTube feed many years ago of someone having a schizophrenia episode. And as he described, vividly hearing voices and sounds that weren't actually there, I found myself wondering how terrifying it must have been. But that also made me more interested in the disorder, in chemistry, and also psychology. And today I will be investigating in its key risk factors and approaches to prevention. My name is Tingzhi Wang. I'm a junior at Tri High School, California, and my mentor for this project was Vincent. Schizophrenia is a mental psychotic disorder. It results in delusions, mental unclarity, loss of touch with reality, and hallucinations. It affects 1 in 222 adults worldwide. It has a higher than average suicide rates among patients and is also a common cause of disability. People that have schizophrenia are unable to navigate their day-to-day life normally. And from these facts, we can already see how drastic its negative impact is. While there is a medical necessity surrounding schizophrenia, its causes and cures are still unknown. There are numerous hypotheses and models present, but there has yet to be one that is broadly accepted by the scientific community. So today I will be giving some potential causes and risk factors and also preventative measures. So the first one is genetics. People that have a family history of schizophrenia are more likely to get it as well. For this, there are two models: common disease, common variant, and also common disease, rare variant. For common disease, common variant, it states that for a disease to manifest, the entirety of the CDCV causing variants must all occur. So although the variants might be very common, it's the combination that's rare. And for this model, they have found a mutation in a major histocompatibility complex in chromosome 6, and it basically fights infections in the perinatal phase. For CDRV, however, only the rare variant has to exist for the disease to manifest. However, the variant is unlikely to be found in the average population. So disrupted in schizophrenia 1 protein is the translocation of chromosome 1 and chromosome 11, and DISC1, it regulates sympathetic composition and brain development. So some flaws in the CDCV model: it requires both consenting schizophrenia patients and relatives to give their data because schizophrenia is a genetic disease. And because that's very rare to find, this leads to a lack of diversity in data to sufficiently support the model. For flaws in the CDRV model, it goes against the law of natural selection. So here's what I mean. The law of natural selection states that the unbeneficial traits are not selected because they do not aid the species' survival. So this would mean that the rare variant would have to be negatively selected, but that is pretty contradicting. So that's the flaw. So now moving on to drugs and neurotransmitters. So cannabis, cocaine, LSD, or amphetamines are all suspected to increase the likelihood of schizophrenia. Schizophrenia patients are also more likely to use drugs. Excessive dopamine, glutamate, or serotonin exists in the brain of patients. And now from all of that, we have arrived at the question: does using drugs cause schizophrenia, or is it the other way around? Does having schizophrenia cause drug use? Well, drugs have a correlation with increasing risks of schizophrenia. Cannabis use causes symptoms to appear earlier, and heavy users are 4 times as likely to develop psychosis than the average person. However, on the other hand, psychotic disorder patients use drugs more frequently than the average being. And this is due to a dysfunction in their reward system, and they seek to satisfy their hypersensitive dopamine system. Now moving on to risks. So for risks, I want to touch on causation and correlation because some risks might be the cause of the disorder, but some might just be correlated to it. So they might be closely related in pattern, but it doesn't necessarily mean it causes the disorder. For birth factors, this includes mothers giving ages above the age of 30, multiparity, which is like twins, triplets, quadruplets, having smaller children in size during delivery, maternal bleeding, birth in late winter. For childhood, this includes childhood trauma, motor impairments, which basically means that they have the loss of function of a body part, living in urban or heavily populated areas, and having minority status. So now moving on to symptoms. So schizophrenia symptoms look different for everyone. And as time progresses, symptoms will change. During schizophrenia, patients experience both positive and negative symptoms. Now, positive symptoms doesn't necessarily mean it's a good thing. Positive symptoms are defined as the emergence of new functions that add to someone's normal functions, while negative symptoms take away from someone's normal functions. So, for example, positive symptoms include delusions, false belief that they're being threatened, unable to distinguish between fictional and non-fictional world, impending sense of major disaster. And another one is hallucinations. Hearing voices is the main one. However, it can also affect other senses, such as sight, smell, and taste. Disorganized motor behavior. So they're unable to form coherent thoughts, they have erratic behavior, inappropriate behavior in social settings, and acting childlike. Negative symptoms include being less inclined to tend to hygiene, a loss of will or motivation, distancing themselves from social settings, and losing ability to perform certain actions or behaviors. Now, I want to take a look at this chart. So on the x-axis is the time, and it progresses from prenatal, before birth, childhood, proton, early symptoms of the disorder, first episode psychosis, treatment, relapse, and into the chronic phase. On the y-axis, there includes neurobiology, risk factors, and symptoms severity. And the blue line is the negative symptoms, the red line is the positive symptoms. You can see the positive symptoms overshadow the negative ones during first episode psychosis, the latter half, and also mainly in relapse. The negative symptoms overshadow the positive one, mainly in prodrome and in the latter half of treatment and mainly in chronic phase. Risk factors are, as we talked about before, and for neurobiology, so one of them is altered sympathogenesis. What this means is that it can result in different formations of synapses. And altered sympathetic pruning means it basically involves the process of stopping synapse growth. And failure in both of them can impact the amount of neurotransmitters signaled and also lead to gray matter loss, which means losing neurons. And that's irreversible, which can lead to severe brain impairment. Now, lastly, on to preventative measures. These measures are based off of the causative and risks and symptoms as stated before. So before symptoms have emerged, they should monitor high-risk individuals, for example, people with a family history of schizophrenia. And this way, you can provide a solution as quickly as possible. And also, we mentioned before that a risk is maternal bleeding, right? So providing proper maternal care, such as intaking proper nutrition, taking oxytocin and iron supplements, are also great ways to combat that. After symptoms, they should provide a proper support network because we mentioned schizophrenia patients are more likely to commit suicide, and for the negative symptoms, they are more likely to withdraw from social settings and lose motivations. So they should also enroll in research-based drug abuse prevention programs because we know that schizophrenia patients are more likely to abuse drugs than the average person. Antipsychotics and drugs that regulate dopamine are also a main one, and they're as listed. And psychotherapy or cognitive behavioral therapy can help identify troubling behaviors and help the patients cope with psychotic symptoms and behaviors. Thank you for listening. I hope you learned something new today.